अस्य श्रीरामरक्षास्तोत्रमहामन्त्रस्य बुधकौशिकऋषिः श्रीसीतारामचन्द्रो देवता अनुष्टुप्छन्दः सीताशक्तिः श्रीमतु हनुमान् कीलकम् श्रीरामचन्द्रप्रसादफलसिद्ध्यर्थे रामरक्षास्तोत्रम्.
All of us, every single living being, regardless of our species, regardless of how we look, we are all searching for the divine, knowingly or unknowingly. For most of us, of course, it's unknowingly. For most of us, we think we're looking for other things. We think we're looking for a mate. We think we're looking for money. We think we're looking for fame. We think we're looking for so many things, none of which satisfy. In actuality, of course, if someone were to actually go up to almost any, at least human being, because you can talk to humans, you can't talk to ants or cats or dogs, but if you were to go up to any human, if you were to ask them, listen, would you not say that really it's the case that with all the searching that we're doing in this world, really what we're looking for is one thing, which when we have that, we have everything that we're looking for. We have satisfaction, we have fulfillment. Wouldn't you say that's the case? If you were to ask that to almost any human being, wouldn't they agree? Of course. Of course. What would they say? No, I would like to still be dissatisfied. No. We're all looking for that one thing, which once we have it, the search ends. Well, of course, consciously, for those individuals who are conscious and who are aware, we know that that is the divine. We know that that is God. Well, what is that divine? That's the million-dollar question. That's the question for which even those individuals who are aware, who are conscious of this search, there will be so much contention. What is God? If we were to envision God, of course there's the Western notion, the stereotypical Western notion of the old man with the big beard in the sky, who is there. We all have different ideas of what is the nature of that divine. Some individuals will say, well, it is formless. It has no form whatsoever. It's nirguna. It has no shape, no form. There's nothing that you can point to and say, well, that is the divine. Rather, the divine is simply this impersonal energy that's all around us. Again, people will have all sorts of different ideas about what is the nature of that for which we search. Well, the highest conception that exists within the Vedic literature is that first, there of course is a God. Second, that God is the source of all that is auspicious in reality. That God is the source of all that is good, of all that is real, of all that is true. That God is the source of eternality itself. You see, it's not merely that God is eternal. God is the source of that very eternality itself. An amazing thing to think. As devotees of Krishna specifically, we understand, having read the purport of Bhagavan Sri Krishna himself, having heard what he himself says in his Bhagavad Gita, but also in his Upanishads, in his Vedas, in his Mahabharata, Ramayana, in his Puranas, in his Bhagavata Purana, Vishnu Purana specifically. We know that very specifically it is Narayana who is the highest form, the summum bonum, and the highest form of that Supreme Absolute. Again, there are various images of God. But how do we know which image truly is God? Is God the old man in the sky? Is God simply some imaginary idea that we can make up of all these myriad, potentially thousands, millions of ideas of what does God actually look like? What truly is that locus, that center of personality that is the divine? We know several things. That divine must be sweet. We know that divine must be beautiful. We know that divine must be of the nature of infinite love, that it must be the source of all reality. My guru had a very interesting saying, to the point where some of his disciples actually took several of his talks, put them together in a book form, and gave this as the title of the very book itself. Sri Krishna, Reality the Beautiful. My guru would say this. whenever he would speak of God, and who is God? What is God? Sri Krishna, reality, the beautiful. He would say this all the time, to the point where, again, there's actually a book. You can look it up on Amazon, written by my guru, Bhakti Rakshaka Sri Dharma Swami. He would give this interesting story, true story actually, of this German philosopher who in the 1930s went to India. And this was a person who, again, was a German philosopher, very educated, but he wanted to know what was God. And he wanted to know, kind of like I did when I was maybe 10 years old, in an unadulterated, authentic way, without games, what is God? Once and for all, what is God? And not merely do I want to know what is God because I'm curious. I want to know what is God so that I know where I can place my head in submission. At whose feet do I bow? So again, not just a game of the mind, but a desperate yearning of the soul. Well, this German philosopher went to India, and he traveled several places. He went to all the holy places, and he visited temple after temple, and he spoke to guru after guru. Some gurus wouldn't even speak to him. They didn't know why he was there. You know, what are you? You're a Videshi. What are you doing here? How can you know about our religion? That's right. He didn't give up. Finally, he found himself in Calcutta, of all places, and he went into this one temple. And in this temple, this was kind of a universal Hindu temple, which back then was still somewhat rare. Now, so many temples are so-called universal Hindu temples. But back then it was a rare thing. They had various altars to different deities, many different deities, you know. And as he was there, he was about to give up. And he just said to himself, I just don't understand, you know, who are all these gods, you know, what is all this? How am I going to know? I want to know who is the source, who is the ultimate source. And as he was sitting there, he looked around the temple, and he looked at one deity, and that deity had all sorts of weapons and like 8 arms, you know. Then he looked at another deity, and the first one he looked at was a woman. Now he's looking at a man, and again, multiple arms with all sorts of weapons and different things, different instruments that the deity was holding, you know. Then he looked at another one, again, similar. And then finally he looked and he saw Krishna. And he saw something unique. Krishna also was holding something, but not weapons, not something for a task. He was holding a flute. And he had his legs crossed as if he was dancing. And he had a big smile on his face, and he was enjoying life. When this German philosopher saw this, he thought to himself of someone who he had read for many years. He thought of Hegel, another German philosopher who had lived 150 years before him, and how Hegel had said something interesting in one of his books. Hegel said something to the effect of, when we encounter that highest being, that highest God, of which there is nothing more supreme, what we see is that God is doing only one thing: dancing. That God has no duties. God has no responsibilities. God is not merely the creator. God is not merely the babysitter, the transcendental babysitter. But that God in himself is joy. That God in himself is anandam, is bliss. That God in himself has nothing to do. But merely by his own enjoyment, he gives anandam, bliss, to all of reality. Understanding this, that German philosopher finally understood, this Krishna. Somehow Hegel knew Krishna, and that's who he was talking about. Interestingly, just as an aside, that German philosopher ended up becoming my guru's godbrother. He ended up taking initiation from my guru's guru, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakura. So, what is the point? The point is this, that yes, we all have different ideas of what is God. For most of us, however, when we think of God in relation to us. You see? God is my creator. God is responsible for all that I perceive. God is responsible for my well-being, for my caretaking. Whenever I have a need, God is there to fulfill my need. Well, that's an approach, but it is a twilight approach. It is twilight. It is the very beginning. The sun has not risen. When the sun of vidya, of true knowledge, arises, what we realize is that in actuality, our relationship to God is the opposite. What we realize is that rather than God being there to fulfill our needs, we begin to see ourselves as there to fulfill God's needs. Rather than seeing ourselves in the center and God is there as our wait servant, there to help us with everything we need, with every little thought that pops into our mind, rather we understand that no, I am not in the center, God is in the center. God is in the center. And again, with this process of surrender, with this process of seeing God as the ultimate subject of which I am only the object, with that prapatti, with that surrender, as I have to remind people again and again, there is cause for fear? No. Because what is that center? Anandam, the source of all bliss. That is what we are surrendering to. It is that which is the center of quite literally all of reality. So, what are we celebrating today? Krishna Janmashtami. What are we celebrating today? The most truly amazing of all things. That this center of reality, that Sri Krishna, reality the beautiful, this source of all bliss that I was just talking about for all this time, appears before us. Most amazing thing. That the infinite makes himself known to the finite. And this truly is the most wondrous of things when you think about it. Because, as I've said in the past, and it bears repeating, what does it mean for the finite to know the infinite? Logically, and I think we're all very logical people here, we're all very intelligent, very educated people here. You know, we all know philosophy very well. It doesn't take a very big leap of logic to understand that for something that is finite to grasp something that is infinite is an impossibility. It is akin to taking a little thimble and thinking that you can take the entire ocean and put it in that little thimble. It's a logical impossibility for the finite to grasp the infinite. But then, again, what is the subject? It's not us. Who cares what we can do? What is of importance is what the infinite can do. And what can the infinite do? Everything. Thus, that infinite, if it is the infinite, makes itself known to the finite by its own power. And that power is known by grace. Prasada. Sri Krishna Prasada. So, this is how we know that infinite. And on this particular day, we are celebrating the avatar. We are celebrating the idea, the fact that approximately 5,200 years ago, Bhagavan Sriman Narayana himself came to our earth. You know, we know this verse, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutanam adharmasya tadatmanam shrijamyaham. You know, we know these verses from Bhagavad Gita. Krishna explains why he comes here to this earth. He comes here very specifically when things get so bad, when dharma has receded from our sight. See, dharma is eternal, of course, right? What is it? It's sanatana dharma, the eternal natural way. But it can recede from our sight. Not because it weakens, but because our vision weakens. You know? So when that dharma recedes from our sight, when on the other hand, adharma, the opposite of what is natural, the opposite of what is good, the opposite of what is healthy, what is wholesome, begins to ascend. And there begins to be chaos in society. And people turn on each other, and people begin to hate rather than love. And we begin to have violence and all these terrible things that we can think about. At that point, when it comes to the point when it gets so bad that human beings can, by their own power alone, do nothing to save themselves, and it is now an emergency situation, then Bhagavan Sriman Narayana himself comes to earth to save us. The infinite makes himself known for those who can see him. Well, the last time that this happened, as a Purna Avatar, as a full incarnation of the divine, was 5,200 years ago when Bhagavan Sri Krishna came. This is why we worship Krishna, because he came here to give us a light in the midst of this darkness of the Kali Yuga. What is the Kali Yuga? You know, the Kali Yuga is the current age that we're living in. It's over 5,100 years old, and it is indeed the darkest of ages. It doesn't take a tremendous stretch to see that that's the case. Just read the news. Just look around us, especially for those of us who are a little bit older and who remember how in the past people were a little nicer, a little more patient with each other, and how now things are going crazy, how now there's increasingly more violence, more impatience, you know, and I can go on and on. We have seen that those natural qualities that are inherent to the soul have become even more covered. Well, in order to be a light in this very dark age, Bhagavan Sri Krishna himself came. Now, the bad thing is he left 5,100 years ago. So, of course, we can ask ourselves, well, that's nice, that's wonderful, that's good. We can celebrate the fact that Krishna was here, as we do now. We can have pujas, we can think of Krishna. But how is Krishna saving us now? Well, when Krishna left here, he left something behind. Now, what was that? Yes. He left his words. He left his words in the form of the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is the greatest gift for the denizens of the Kali Yuga that can exist. Because through this Bhagavad Gita, by reciting the Bhagavad Gita, by listening to the Bhagavad Gita, by reading the Bhagavad Gita, by understanding these divine words of Bhagavan Sri Krishna, we have the key by which, first, we can understand all of reality, and more, we can penetrate what is the very essence of reality, which is consciousness, which is that which is eternal. We can do that by accessing our true self, which, for all of us here, I think we've read the Bhagavad Gita. We know that the Bhagavad Gita gives us the highest teaching for knowing the true self. Yoga. Dhyana. Yoga means dhyana. Yoga means meditation. And he even gives us the key for that meditation. Manmana bhavamad bhakto ma jajimam namaskuru ma divashyasi satyam te pratijane priyosime. See? Not just meditation on the flower, not just meditation on a beautiful lake, beautiful serene lake, which is nice too. Not just meditation by visualizing that, oh, I'm lying down on a beach and it's so peaceful. You know, that's nice too, but no. By meditating directly upon that which is the source of all reality, we understand reality. By meditating upon the source of all that is good, we ourselves transform ourselves in such a way that there is nothing left in us but good. By meditating on that which is not only consciousness but the source of all consciousness, we begin to understand our own consciousness. Thus, manmana bhavamad bhakto. You know, he uses the first person singular. Meditate upon me, worship me, offer your homage unto me, and in this way you will come to me. I promise you this, and why? Because you just earned your 5th PhD. You earned it now. Right? No. Why? Oh, because, you've been able to stay in full Padmaasana for 3 hours now. Is that why? No. Because you've been able to do tremendous tapasya, because you have been standing on your head for the last 3 days. We didn't even know that was possible, but you've earned your way to the spiritual realm now. Is that why? No. What does Krishna say? Priyosime, because you are my dear friend. In other words, when we make God our friend, when we come to the point where we love God, we trust God. See, what does it mean to have a friend? A true friend. Not a so-called friend, a true friend. Someone you love. It means you trust that person, they trust you. It means that you are there for that person, they're there for you. It means that they're someone who you can rely on and they rely on you. It means, in other words, that there is love. When we can make God such a friend, then we will know God. Also, what does it mean to have friend? When you have a friend, is it a one-way street? The friend only gives to you, gives to you, gives to you? Or is it the other way around? You only give to the friend, give to the friend, give to the friend? No, it's reciprocal. Reciprocal. Interestingly, when we know Bhagavan Sri Krishna in bhakti, in devotion, it is reciprocal. We give to God, and this is what's interesting, even though it's reciprocal, it cannot but be somewhat unequal, because it's the finite with the infinite, you see. When we give to God, God then gives infinitely to us. We've all heard this said before in several contexts, that when we take one step toward God, God takes 3 steps toward us. Right? We've heard this before. It's a famous saying, to the point now, of course it started in Sanatana Dharma, but now many people use it. Many people have adopted that. I've even heard evangelical Christians say that, actually. But with myself, of course, knowing where it originated, they don't know where it originated. But it's true nonetheless. And in fact, that's why so many people have adopted it, because intuitively we know that this is the case. Relationship between ourselves as finite Atman and the infinite Paramatman cannot but be the case, that when we give with love and devotion a flower petal at the feet of the divine, what do we get in return? If we give with true devotion, we get everything. We get liberation itself. So, this is the nature of Bhagavan Sri Krishna. Bhagavan Sri Krishna is the most mysterious of beings, the most unknowable of beings, and yet he lies there within the very center of our very being itself. This is the nature of Krishna, that Krishna upholds all of reality, infinite universes, not infinite planets, not infinite galaxies. There are multiple universes. He upholds them all more easily than we could hold a little mustard seed in our hand. How heavy would that be? Has anyone cooked with mustard seeds? Have you seen mustard seed? They're very small. With less difficulty than we can uphold a mustard seed, he upholds all of reality. And yet, he's our best friend. This is the mystery. This is the paradox. This is the nature of the divine. This is why we are alive, is to know this. So, I should stop there. With that, Bhagavan Sri Krishna ki Jai. Very good.
Asya Sri Dharma Pravartaka Acharyaji Buddha-kaushika Rushihi Sri Dharma Devata Anustupchandaha Sita Siktihi Sri Hanuman Kilakam Sri Ramachandra Prasada Phalasiddhyarthe Ramarakshastotra Parayane Jape Viniyogaha Shayedajanubahum Dhrutasharadhanusham Baddhapadmasanastham Pitam Vaso Vasanam नवकमलदलस्पर्धिनेत्रं प्रसन्नम् वामाङ्कारूढसीतामुखकमलमिलल् लोचनौ नीरदा